going in my head is power. If I'm going to deploy, I mean, Reverend Chime can agree with me. If I'm going to deploy this machine in Mamusa or in Kuje or on the outskirts of Lagos Ibadan Expressway, how much power do I need? How am I going to truck them there? How am I going to make sure that by the time they get there, the actual print heads are not broken? Then I've got to go back to Sweden and wait for customs to clear them, to bring it. There are peculiar issues that we're going to have to fix here to make sure that the solutions that we put in place are actually adaptable and scalable. Hydrofoam has been working in Nigeria for well over 15 years. They've not been able to scale. And the reason they've not been able to scale, one of the things I always tell people ask me, why don't you use hydrofoam? I say, because to use hydrofoam, I've got to have earth. I've got to have massive earth. And it's just not scalable. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to demarket any solution. It's just not scalable. I'm going to still have to do concrete. And if I'm going to do concrete, I've got to come up with concrete that is cheap. So the solutions must be designed to reflect the realities of the local environment. Then I ask myself, and I'm going to round up here. So what are the key trigger points I think we need to factor in as we begin to talk about skill? Reverend Chime is going to be taking the next panel, and he's going to talk about collaboration. The fact of the matter is that we're all small players. I said this to my brother, the MD of UPDC, before this meeting. I said, all of us, when you take your entire balance sheet and dollarize it, you realize you're a small player. All of us. Yet, we're sitting on a massive market. The Nigerian home market is probably the largest untapped frontier. $20 billion market opportunity. You've got to find ways to increase collaboration. I can't do it. None of you can do it alone. Lafarge certainly can't do it alone. We've got to come up with increased collaboration. We've got to put aside our limited focus on our small balance sheets and begin to understand that the only way we can build a real industry is we've got to come together, deploy our collective strengths and capacities, and make it happen. That's the first thing. The second thing is we've got to, once we have that collaboration, we've got to get fiscal concessions. There is no way you can invest in technology without some form of concession. And when we're going to revolutionize the telecom sector, government did that. They gave huge concessions to them. There's no reason why we're not getting concessions. We don't need government money. What we need are fiscal concessions that make it possible for us to invest for the long term. I find it ridiculous that EchoStone applied for pioneering status and were denied. It is ridiculous because they're coming into Nigeria to come and resolve a problem, and they're putting in technology. There's no reason why they cannot get pioneering status and concessions. And those are the kind of things we need to get to push with government. Then the third thing is we've got to find ways of unlocking long-term capital. Once we do collaboration and we work across the various sectors and everybody brings in their core strengths, we're able to unlock long-term capital because to unlock this opportunity will require a whole lot more resources than any of us can individually mobilize. Of course, the next thing then is market segmentation. I'm going to round up where I started from. There's no use me printing nice bungalows that are 20 square foot if the people that are going to buy them do not want them. And there's no need me building one-bed apartments, no matter how nice they are, if the people that I'm trying to sell do not want them. We've got to do a proper market segmentation and devise solutions that ensure that whatever technology we're deploying is acceptable to the market. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dusholu. Our next speaker is, this time is a lady, Engineer Olajumoke Adegunle, Head of Motor Operations at Lafarge.
Good morning, esteemed guests. I'll ask you to permit me to stand on existing protocol. So, Mr. Jide has raised a lot of questions, and I'm sure they'll get answered at the end. But what I want to do is lend my voice to the 3D printing technology to explain it a little bit more for those of us that may still We're trying to understand exactly how it works. So what we've seen and what has been explained very well by Prof. Brando and also by Benga Onimo is that we've had a lot of innovation in the world, across the world. And what we're trying to do is bring it into Nigeria. And it is possible. It may take us time. Yes, there will be challenges, power, etc., but it's not going to stop us from trying and seeing how we can tailor to our local market. So 3D printing, as Prof said, is usually referred to as additive manufacturing because you just go over and you try to grow it from there. How does it really work? So basically what we have today are architectural drawings in 2D. And we take it to site and we translate that on site by taking measurements. And already today, we have computer-aided design for our drawings. But from all those collaborators that Prof. Brando showed on his slide, there is a different degree to computer-aided design to allow 3D printing. So these computer-aided designs are translated by a software and communicated to a robot. Basically, it's a robot. If I take us back to our printer that we're used to, 2D printer, we have a cartridge that has ink in it. When the ink is done, you can't print, you buy a new cartridge. The ink in that cartridge is what you use in printing, which is your mortar or your concrete. So many of us here know enough about concrete. Concrete is cement, sand, gravel, as we call it, water, and sometimes you put chemicals to achieve what you want to achieve. While mortar does not have the big stones, the gravel, the aggregates. So, of course, we can imagine these mortar and concrete is not the typical one we mix on site, which is why a Lafarge Innovation Center and similar companies are involved. They are specially mixed to allow you get the kind of flow you need to get through a robotic arm. So in the video, we saw something moving back and forth. This will be a real-life cartridge for printing a home. So computer-aided design translated and transmitted to a robot, and the robot knows the design you're trying to achieve and goes back and forth, laying your mortar or concrete to achieve your wall, and it goes back and forth while lifting itself higher and higher till you get your wall. That is what we're talking about to achieve this 3D printing. So all these different factors make it possible. First, your computer-aided design, your software translating it, your robots, and we saw there are robot manufacturers, your mortar or concrete mix, which Lafarge is doing, and of course, your location where you need to make this happen and all the workmen and skills that are related to that. So, as a group, we've spent a lot of time on this because of our expertise. We've been over a century long in making cement across the world. We've spent decades gaining concrete expertise on concrete technologies. Those who know us know that whatever concrete you need, you come to us, we can do it. We have that expertise. And more recently, in Nigeria especially, we've started to do mortar. So what we're trying to do as a company is take us in Nigeria from the traditional way of doing construction. And we've been doing this progressively in Lafarge for the 60 years we've been present in this market. Take us from site mix to something that is more modern, which is pre-mix. We've done that in ready-mix concrete. We're present in Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, and any special site we are asked to be dedicated to a project, we do that. And presently, we're doing that for mortar. And we started a tile adhesive where we've mixed it for you. As a customer, you just buy, add water, and do your tiling on site. We train tilers on how to apply for those who do not know how to apply. This has been a constant trend in Lafarge, innovation. And we sell that product across the country. And we want to do more. We want to have plasters, we want to have screeds, and all this will prepare us for something like 3D technology, because eventually we will produce that ink in this country and we'll print those houses in this country. Thank you. So this is our vision, this is what we've been working on, and this is where we are now with 3D printing. So when we come here with these presentations, please know it may not be ready right now, it may take us time, but for us, the vision is to achieve that and to make it a reality in Nigeria as it is already in other parts of the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Engineer Jumoke. Next speaker is also from Lafarge, Engineer Femi Yusuf. He's the head of Product Technical Innovation.
Good morning. Morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to also stand on existing protocol. Thank you so much for having us here today. I think the discussion this morning is actually quite apt and very important because for several years, other industries have progressed substantially in the use of new materials, technology, way of doing things. So the question has always been thrown at, what do we have? And it's sometimes a bit worrying considering the fact that we have a lot of research going on, but the gap has always been to move from the lab to the field and also to scale and commercialize. So I will take more about what we have and try to go as quickly as possible into how we can adapt this to what we have today. So there will be 3D printing, reuse of materials, formwork, cement design for specific components, composite materials, mortar, and precast tiles. And interestingly, some of these have already been done, and they are working. So when you look at concrete, which we produce in Lafarge, Africa, there's a need for more adoption of this. So that, because that will ensure you have better quality control, quality assurance, and it's going to have an impact on reduction of building collapse. What you're having on site, on most construction sites these days, is concrete mixed with various ratios and the impact of water. At the end of the day, the quality of concrete is not good. And when a slab is designed for a C20 concrete, it's mixed on site. What is actually a C12, the reinforcement you have placed works with a C20 concrete, so you're already having a problem. And then the durability is closely linked to the strength or the characteristic strength of concrete. So that's why we're beginning to see very quickly, houses that were built in the 60s and early 70s are still standing, while you have houses that are built in the 80s and late 80s are already showing very serious signs of weakness, and some of them are coming down. So we have to look into that very, very seriously. There is a debate about the use of formwork. I would like to sound a note of warning that we should not totally discard this. I think we're getting to a stage whereby a lot of these novel technologies will become like solutions that you can adapt depending on the project you're going to embark on. Still formwork, we could find out that if you're handling a project where the number of houses may be between 10 and 20 or 50, it could become very useful. But beyond that, maybe it's a bit of a struggle. So I will still like us to look at this technology. We've used it, we've applied it, it works. And all technologies have challenges. If you don't have the challenge, you don't innovate, you don't improve, and it doesn't get better. And if you listen to a lot of the very good innovators, they always advise that you should not wait until you get it right. Once you have a concept and you can, there's an aspect of it that is working, you move. You use the agile method. So once you have a deliverable that you can push out, you push it out. You may be in your lab and someone outside will be able to advise you on something that works, and then it gets better. So now there's another area where it's interesting. We seem to already have a solution, but interestingly, we've not thought about it. We have specific types of cement. But if we ask ourselves, when you break a building into its segments, you'll be shocked to know that there are components that just require a type of cement, which Lafarge is blazing the trail now by bringing out mortar. And with that, your application is faster and you have cost competitiveness. So that's an area that will help us. The other is composite materials. We do a lot of traditional work. You do your concrete or it's steel. But composite materials bring the power of using the strength of one material in another, and then you reduce member sizes and you may be able to go a lot taller. And it's not as complicated as we think. You take a rib slab, for example. In a rib slab, you can achieve much wider spans. But what it's doing is that it's reducing the traditional void of your slab, so your typical thickness of beams of 230 by 450 may not be necessary. So you have reduced material, you have reduced, you also have some construction speed there, depending on how you look at it. So these are things that are already available. So what we then need to do is apply it more. I as a construction professional, I do as much of it as possible. So I'm a small advocate of new technology and application, but I believe we need to talk about this more. We need to apply more of this on larger projects. And like I said, Lafarge keeps blazing the trail. And then you have one other material that is very interesting, used a lot in Lagos, that's the precast tiles. When it first came in, there was a lot of skepticism. And what I like about the history of these precast tiles is that it's following the same trend and pattern like the new technology. So when it first came on board, people were like, hey, let it just be used in a typical compound. It should not be used on roads because we are not sure it will work. And before you knew it, it was used on estate roads. Before you knew it, it was used on state roads that are carrying 40-tonner, 50-tonner trucks. Thank you, sir. I will round up in 2 minutes because I still have to touch on that 3D a little bit. So it's important that we open up to this new technology. Now, for 3D printing, my position and my view is that we need to move into the manufacturing circle, like cars, like phones, and where the construction has to move into that. Whatever technology we have now that will allow us to move into that, we'll have to collaborate, the research, with the industry, designers, and move that technology as fast as possible. What's beautiful about this is that it has been used to build all the typical kinds of buildings that we need. So the next phase should be, okay, if we are going to scale this up, what are the challenges and how can we resolve those challenges? Thank you very much. Thank you for taking it.
Thank you, Engineer. Before I call on the next speaker, which will be Mr. Dangiwa, Architect Dangiwa, I'd like to just quickly take you back. 5 speakers have spoken, so let me just refresh your mind. I laid out 4 criteria for the building of the future, whether it's infrastructure, if it's houses, and let's see to what extent these have been covered. I heard from Engineer Nimu that the materials are eco-friendly, the green buildings. I heard about material quality being improved. I heard about recycling of the waste, flexible and scalable. I heard about other aspects of the materials that improve upon the current way that we're using materials, and of course improve on the waste. Prof. Okolo, in describing 3D printing as additive manufacturing, went through other features of it, including the speed that it brings, the impact on labor, the eco-friendliness, the safety on site. Remember that, safety on site, we often forget these things. He also indicated that it would have impact on materials and labor, as much as reducing the costs by as much as 50%. In terms of the future, the transformation that would take place would result in what we can find in a build environment where we have this building information management, which is completely computer driven and allowing you to really bring down the number of people on site. Not always a good thing in an environment like ours, but we can find other ways and retrain people to be able to do the new ways of doing things. It reminds me of an old adage we used to call WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get. This time you can actually see from the drawings to the delivery of the buildings being the same. Can I say also, when Octo5 came to speak, Jide really brought home the real dimension of the requirements and the demand. 45% demand is for lower housing. That is every demand in the sector. Houses below 10,000, 40 houses below 15,000. I'm talking dollars now. When you put those together, that's 85% of the market. The rest is where everyone is focusing, 15%. We need to retune our minds to focus where we ought to. He spoke about urbanization, and hopefully sometime tomorrow we'll be able to bring some more light to that. He spoke about the problems of power. RE, renewable energies, might help us deliver on power even in remote locations. And there's also some BEEC, Nigeria National Building Energy Efficiency Codes, which I would refer to at some other point in time. We have other local solutions. We spoke about the importance of collaboration, of concessions from the fiscal perspective. He also spoke about the need to be long-term. We are always very myopic in our thinking. The Chinese, I tend to make this expression a lot. The Chinese think in terms of 200-year horizon when they're planning. And when they're implementing, they reduce it to 100-year horizon and they keep rolling it forward. So if we are to compete in the world of tomorrow, we need to extend our horizon in everything that we do. Jumoke spoke about the specialist materials, how CAD and software and robots are now playing a part in, and how they're moving to the next phase of concrete mixing and pre-mixing to drive the speed that industry needs. The last engineer that just spoke, Engineer Yusuf, spoke about the composite materials, and he spoke about formwork while raising a question mark about it, but we need to adapt the technology to our environment. So that was just to give you a perspective of what has been covered in the session to date. At the moment, I'm going to invite Architect Dangiwa to speak on the financial. I believe you're speaking on the financial aspects, aren't you? Yeah, and delivery of housing. So, Architect Dangiwa, MD, CEO of Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed the last presentation. It was very interesting for us in the affordable housing delivery to Nigerians. I wish Mr. Festus will invite them for the next housing show to do their stand here with the 3D. That will be good for us to see, honestly. So I was to make a presentation yesterday quite well on housing finance in post-COVID-19 era, lessons and opportunities for emerging markets. I had to travel yesterday to come back to yesterday, but I couldn't because we had a meeting with the governor of Kano State at 2 a.m. for their return to National Housing Fund. And yesterday morning, the weather couldn't allow any flights to fly till late night. I'm sorry for that. Thank you very much. I think if I can, am I supposed to take that same paper as of yesterday?
I think it's on this.
Okay, thank you.
Already, yes.
Right. Thank you very much. The paper quite well is on the housing finance post-COVID-19, the lessons and opportunities for the emerging markets. What you need to know is that the paper will capture the COVID-19 pandemic where we are currently, the global perspective and the Nigerian perspective, the responses to the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact on housing, then the lessons from the COVID-19 pandemic for emerging economies, and the conclusion, of course. So my first, that one is we'll have to look at the global, because since it emerged in December 2019, the COVID-19 pandemic has been dramatic change in life, as we know, both in the economics and health system. But we have to know that the economics and health system are seeing the signs of recovery with the vaccinations in the first half of the 2021. The efforts are open now for the upcoming economies to start life under the new normal. However, as you quite well know that the concerns are rising due to the third wave of the COVID-19, which has driven by the virulent Delta variant of the COVID-19, which we learned is more devastating. But the pertinent questions we need to ask, being asked now, are that when will there be an end to this pandemic? How effective will the vaccinations be against the future strains and variants? I've had my 2 shots on the vaccine, but someone was telling me I have to be careful with the 3rd variant because it might be more devastating. It may not even recognize the vaccine. So we have to keep praying. And how soon will we see some of the semblance of stability of the global economy, and what will be the long-term impact of COVID-19 on health and the economies of the nations? So for Nigeria, since we have looked at the global, for Nigeria, thankfully the health impact relatively mild in sub-Saharan Africa and Nigeria as a whole, both locally in Nigeria. I think we are one of the luckiest nations or the luckiest race in the world. However, the socio-economic impact has seen a devastating, particularly for Nigeria, because we suffered twin shocks. Because apart from the shocks of the COVID-19, there's a fall in the national revenues arising from the Russian-Saudi oil war, price war in the 2020. So Nigerian economy slipped back into recession, and by mid-2020, following the slight recovery from the 2016 financial crisis. However, we are very optimistic economically because the outlook for 2022, after the rebound of the last quarter of 2020, we'll see some semblance. From the graph, we can see that the GDP has dived down after 2020, then it started rising. So also the real GDP also rose, and then that of the CPI, which is the Consumer Protection Index, and the budget balance has also been rising, with the current account, which is also rising to that level. The policy response, if you look at the responses of the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact on housing, the first one is the policy response to COVID-19. Apart from the lockdown and restrictions in movements, government across the globe has taken fiscal monetary policies to address the economic fallout of the pandemic. In Nigeria in particular, the combination of government and CBN initiatives are that of the fiscal measures and then the monetary measures. For the fiscal measures, there is a revision of the budgetary targets, including the 550 billion naira COVID-19 intervention fund. All agencies and ministries were asked during the pandemic to reduce their budget downwards by almost 30%. There's also 150 billion naira support for subnational entities. There's a conditional cash transfers to 3.6 million households through social register that was taking place at that time. There's a business wage support, where some small businesses were supported in order to pay their wages for their own staff who are unable to move out during the pandemic. And we also have there is a forbearance on interventions, loans by reduction of interest rates from 9% to 5%. There's also reduction of monetary and policy rates. There's a proposed injection of 3.6 trillion into the banking sector to support the health with 100 billion naira, manufacturing 1.2 trillion, or 2 trillion, and the real estate of 1.5 trillion. That's a creation of 50 billion naira target facility, and of course, the currency devaluation. Another response is the actions on the housing sector, which is more particular to this, is there were quick interventions for rental and mortgage composites of the housing sector by most national governments. Particularly we in the mortgage sector, we gave our own concessions. Those who could not pay their own mortgages, concessions were given to them if there are enough reasons to know that. On the real market, we have suspended evictions were also suspended, because you cannot evict somebody during the COVID-19, such you cannot go out to fend for himself. So at that time, there is the suspensions of evictions, extended rental contracts, there's rent freezes, and even rent subsidies were given at that time. The mortgage debt markets were also not affected in the housing sector, which is the mortgage forbearance, the foreclosure suspension, because the time you suspend evictions, you have to do that as well. Then the mortgage repayment support and tax difference. Other impacts, which is worth noting, is the impact of response and reactions of house prices. Because house prices appreciate in most developed countries in 2021 currently. In US up to 13%, in Canada 7%, and kept on going, Australia 6%, and year on 23% in New Zealand and 9.5% in UK. But caution must be taken as exercise to avoid the reliefs and the interventions resulting in long-term market distortions, because housing price bubbles as a result of interest rate mitigations for tax exemptions and withdrawal of rental housing. From this one, the graph, you can see that the impact is there, then the relief measures are there, and the possible long-term distortions are all enumerated, as I said earlier. Then if you go to the real response of the impact, we need to go to the lessons learned, since we have discussed about the impact, the response. The lessons are that affordability for demand side housing finance will become more critical in the face of falling or outright loss of income going forward. And then there's also the housing needs are changing, the real estate landscape, and need timely response, because homes have now turned into, they are no longer accommodation living spaces, but they are transforming into workplaces, as well as work goes remotely currently during that time. The second group of users who's in the age bracket of 25 to 35 years will drive the new dynamics of housing needs, either as renters or home buyers, because those age brackets, they have more different demands currently. Within the Nigerian market, real estate developers already are witnessing preferential of smaller or more compact and functional spaces, like studio houses and two-bedroom flats. Existing large properties are being remodeled to offer shared or temporary accommodation, especially in the upscale area. Technology and innovation, which you all know, with the technology of this 3D during the COVID-19, it will make a lot of impact at that. For FMBN, as we quite well know, that Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria will have embarked on adoption of core banking solutions and that technology. And during the economic, there was a National Economic Sustainability Program by the federal government of Nigeria at that time, which appointed the vice president to be the chairman of that. Institutions were encouraged to make an impact, especially create jobs and ensure that they reduce poverty and they reduce the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic at that time. FMBN was not left out to the production of 5,000 housing units. We have to fund 5,000 housing units with 40 billion naira in order to reduce the effect of COVID. The contract for this has been awarded. Most developers have already on site for these ones. So in the conclusion aspect of it, you'll find that the impact of COVID-19 pandemic has been devastating to health and economic life of countries, including economies which face additional economic challenges arising from poor fundamentals. But after a general lull, the real estate sector is experiencing rise or is experiencing an uptick. And the more preferred destination of investments, shunning the more volatile money and the quality of market in most economies, as evidenced in the rising property prices. This positive trend, however, implies more pressure on achieving affordability and accessibility for the medium and low income market as macroeconomic indicators turn negative. The need for government interventions to stabilize economics and housing markets remain paramount in the near future, despite the risk of rising price bubbles. Despite these, opportunities exist for growing housing markets in emerging economies by public and private sector initiatives that key into emerging trends and preferences and integrating innovative technologies and practices. That's why I found this presentation by the last presenters on 3D technology very interesting. Other questions, which I'm sure people will ask a lot of questions when it comes to that. How affordable are they and how could they be deployed to the low income segment of the market of the housing? Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Engineer Architect Dangiwa. From your presentation, I picked up a couple of things. I see the changing needs for housing and the changing dynamics of and requirements of the new class of homeowners going forward for the future. And I see a need from a financing perspective, the need for new risks, new models of financing, and really new ways of looking at the investors, of looking at the buyers, of looking at the developers, of looking at the market. We no longer have the market of yesterday. The market of the future has completely different dynamics. Octo 5, Ejide in his presentation drew attention to that. Now I open up for a few minutes to take questions for the presenters. Please keep it short. We'd rather you ask a question than make a comment. Yeah.
So please, if you have a question, can you signify by raising your hand?
Yes, there's a gentleman on that end.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nasir Ibrahim from Black Orchard. An interesting presentation that will have an impact on the construction industry. But I'm wondering, similar to the presentation of Architect Giwa regarding the impact of COVID on the global economy. Usually governments, if they want to stimulate the economy, they go into construction worldwide. Everybody will agree with that. I'm wondering if the use of 3D printing will have an effect on creating jobs. When you go with robots and things like that, they have the tendency to eliminate the numerous number of people that are working in the construction industry. So I don't know if Lafarge have thought of the impact of going with technology to the detriment of the labor that is being generated by the construction industry. Thank you.
We can take another question before I pass it over. Anyone else? Okay, I'd like Professor Okolo to first of all respond to that question from the perspective of the...
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Someone has a question.
Okay, please, go ahead.
Engineer F.O. Abona was my name from Asaba, Ministry of Housing. From the presentation of this 3D construction method, I discovered that we're going to go on high-rise buildings. What provision for stability of the building? Because in our conventional constructions, there is the provision for reinforcement. We talk about reinforcement area. So I want to see, the question is what provision is to be made or to be included in order for it to be stable, so structures. Because the engineer who presented first, and the first I saw the additive remodeling, everything to all to the point of the roofing, even for the story structure. So what aspects or what type of thing are they thinking of, or technology that can strengthen the building just the way the reinforcement does? Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe we can take one more. One more? Okay, if not, sorry, there's a gentleman here. Are the ladies all happy with the presentation? I'd like to see a lady raise question.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Khalid Lawal from Greenland Concepts. With respect to the 3D innovation, we all know the emerging markets is going towards that part, but the main question will be the affordability. What is the comparison in terms of costs? We have the block, the mortar components for the traditional building. What is the comparison in terms of costs to the 3D printing? Thank you.
Right. Okay, so Professor, as you answer the first question, I'd like you to respond specifically to the aspect you said 3 people on site can deliver on the construction. So what's the impact, adverse impact on the jobs market?
Thank you very much for the questions. In terms of the adoption of this technology within the labor market, factors, jobs will be lost, but new jobs will be created as well. In my presentation, I already talked about the fact that the construction sector is a muscle-driven sector, the way we see it today. And you cannot keep competing on muscles. At some point, brain power takes over, and we need to start getting our people to the point where brain power takes over. Brain power generates more income. This is a fact. So the concept of, jobs are lost, jobs are gained as well. The marketability of our labor force increases as well. It has to do with retraining the labor population we have. I just give an example. In Germany, one of the things that happened as a result of COVID was that pilots lost their jobs. We have about almost over 500 million pilots existing in Germany. Out of that number, more than half of them have lost their jobs. And part of the things they've done is to go to look for new employment possibilities. Pilots are good managers. Some of them are being retrained to do new things. It is also the same for the construction industry. Once a new technology comes, certain jobs disappear, new jobs come up. Today, we don't have secretaries as we used to know them 30 years ago, because the director, the managers, they all use their laptops. They use their phones to do new things. The secretary, as we know it, is lost, basically, or the typist, as we know it, is lost. The evolution of our labor environment has to be appreciated. This is all I can say about this.
Prof, I can also think of young people being able to develop the software and the programs that would drive this industry going forward. So it's not all on the negative side. Yeah, thank you. Anyone else from, yeah, okay, please, engineer.
Yeah, I think I'm very much aligned to what the prof said. We definitely, there'll be new opportunities, like you said, in the software and engineering part. But again, to be honest, we also need to also prioritize, take things one at a time, deliver the housing, let people have shelter, very important, and the other things will follow. And I know the government is doing a lot also in terms of empowering people in other areas to create sustainable jobs. So, yeah.
Right. Okay, to the second question. Do you want to say something?
The only thing I have to add to that is, and I actually disagree about jobs being lost. So the prof is right. We're a muscle-driven society right now. We need to become a skill-driven industry. We have huge deficits when it comes to finishing specialties. We don't have most of our masons can become master tilers, but they don't need to scale up right now because it's easy to just be laying blocks. The minute we begin to go with technology, all the skill levels have to go up. Once the skill level goes up, the earning capacity also increases. So I believe that at the end, it's a win-win, not a loss-win.
Thank you. Second question.
Yeah, so I think the second question asked Engineer Yusuf, that was talking about.
Yeah, the tensile strength
yes,
and the concrete durability.
Yeah, for the second question, it was actually talking about stability of the building as you go up. So, and stability for anything with a spine is a function of lateral wind load, or where you have earthquake issues. But we're very lucky. Nigeria has a very low seismicity band, even though there's a lot of serious look at that because we're beginning to see light tremors here and there. But for the for typical areas where you're looking at wind loading, what you're going to have for your G+1 is that the the mortar will have areas that will also be reinforced to take your lateral wind loading. Now, if you are going to go higher than that, you now then have to think of your typical shell wall that is designed to resist lateral forces. So that will be embedded within your building. But what is interesting about what we are seeing is that your printer is a typical steel frame, and then you have the printer head that is printing the walls. Now, if you're going to go higher, you then need your steel frame to be taller before you print the wall for the next floor. But then you have to put, stability is a key component of any structural frame. So what you do is that you put in your elements that will resist lateral forces before you do your next floor. So that will be your construction sequence. But when you compare this with the traditional form of construction, you're still going to be faster. And like what I was saying when I was talking about the use of composite materials, there's a lot of power in 3D printing that we have not even deployed yet. Because right now, we're still looking at, let us even get things right. For example, the walls, what we are seeing, you are talking of a 20 megapascal wall. So right now, to be safe, what we are doing is using, even for the ground floor buildings, we're still using very light steel members. We're not loading the wall as it is. So we're still using very light steel members just to check to be sure that everything is fine. The next phase is you load that wall. Once we are happy with the trial, with the modeling in the lab and on the computer, when you get to your G+1, you are now be talking about precast floor slabs. So you're going to have a faster speed of construction, and you're going to have a lot of efficiencies. So the question is fantastic. It's actually out, and it's going to incorporate your standard procedure for structural design, but it's going to allow you the flexibility of looking at composite material, of also reducing the cost of construction.
Thank you, Engineer Yusuf. And to the third question, any other panelists? We're wrapping up. Can you just repeat your third question again, please? The gentleman that right there. Okay, affordability. Yeah, the cost. So I think, yeah.
Okay, thanks. I mean, interesting, you know. Again, if I bring it down home to Africa, you know, we're just starting this, and we're still developing and learning as we go. But if you recall what I showed you, the example we've done in Malawi, in terms of materials, efficiency, we're talking 60% savings. And, you know, we're saying, you know, if you look at the traditional way of building, really that's where materials, labor, those are huge cost drivers. And this actually, technology actually helps you to bring this down. And I think this was actually also reinforced by the prof when you mentioned also. So definitely, I can't put a number to it yet, but there's definitely some good savings that will come. Okay, Fem.
I was having a chat with Benga, I think over the weekend, that when we get into the actual construction, this bit about the time you gain and the reduction in waste of material, I won't be surprised if we already have a few people doing a research on it. But right now, we cannot put numbers to it, but I can guarantee you there's a lot of savings there, which over time, data will show us what's actually being saved. And this hits the bottom line of a typical contractor. So I wouldn't like us to look at savings just from the savings we are making on the frame, but let's look at the overall holistic picture and the impact it is making. Yeah.
The fact that we're able to scale up is also going to add to the savings. Prof, do you have some more remarks?
Yeah, I just want to say something about the structural strength of the printed houses. The good thing is that all the work that is done physically is first of all done in simulation. And oftentimes the agreement between your simulation result and what actually comes out is really, really good. So we have a case where any structure that is 3D printed is rigorously analyzed using computer tools or computational tools, and the data comes out well. Today, with 3D printing, we cannot go beyond the 4th floor today, anywhere. We cannot go beyond the 4th floor. And the stimulation work that makes that possible is sound and solid. If it could be done in Germany, where we have very strict building codes, then it's possible. The next point I just wanted to say is the cost savings part of it. In terms of cost savings, if you think about the waste we have in our construction sites today, it is horrendous. You have a tipper of blocks coming, about 10 are destroyed. You don't have that in 3D printing.
Yes, thank you very much. And just to also add, if I look at it also from the financial point of view, we've been talking of, funding for this. So imagine you pick up facility to develop. Once you can do that faster, you can turn it over faster yourself. And, at the end of the day, your overall cost of funding is reduced. So I think, like Femi mentioned, it's holistic. There's so many areas, we can bring it all together.
Yeah, I'd like to thank our presenters for the very engaging session. And I'd like to also let you know that tomorrow there is a session on prop tech. So that's sort of beginning to push the frontiers of what we can do in this sector. So please, the first session tomorrow, I hope it will be the first session, but one of the sessions tomorrow will be covering that. So thank you very much, and I hand over now to the organizers. I think the custom is to have a group photograph. So the photographers are close by, just 30 seconds to have a group photograph, quickly.
Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for them. Thank you very much. Please keep clapping till they get to their